The Quilt project aims to be a new mod loader for Minecraft that forked off the Fabric project to do its own thing, trying to be fast not only in performance but also with updates, while allowing you to run the mods you already use on Fabric. But is that really all there is to it? Why does Quilt even exist? See, Quilt has a reputation, and depending on where you look at it from, it's either a good or a bad reputation. And today I'm going to talk about Quilt in a way no one really has done before. So hi, I'm Lunar, and I've been digging into Minecraft mod loaders for the past few weeks. And this is part 3 in a series of investigations into why we have so many mod loaders and the stories that made them. So sit back, hit that little sub button, and relax while I tell you a story about Minecraft's history. In our previous video, we discussed how Fabric rose to prominence as Forge slowly got bogged down by adding updates for niche mods that slowed the game down for everyone. While on the other side, Fabric had its magical 10-minute updates thanks to the system built by player called Matcher, which essentially identified those obfuscated code pieces we discussed before between versions and then matched them. This allowed Fabric to toy around with snapshots within 10 to 15 minutes, except for when there were major changes from Mojang. This might have been one of the reasons a lot of developers flocked to it, as they could test their mod on snapshots for when the game officially updated. They would be ready. However, a small minority of developers felt a little bit let down by the fact that Fabric was seemingly not getting rid of their implementation of Mixins, which was supposed to happen but never did. This, coupled with a few angry looks from developers towards player and his rather abrasive nature, caused some friction as well. See, while player wasn't as direct as Lex, and thus wasn't perceived as an ass that much, it didn't help that player already had some history in the modding scene for going after fellow mod developers, but we will get into that a little bit later. Now for me, I like it when people are direct sometimes. That's the best way to get across what you want to say, but for some people this can come off as abrasive and or aggressive. And this perceived aggression eventually morphed into a few developers starting their own project. A project that would fork off Fabric to make its own thing out of it. And of course, that project was Woven. I know you're probably smearing your keyboard right now, furiously typing, Lunar, what the hell is a Woven? And hey, while you're there, tell me what mods you're currently playing or something. I don't know, man, be creative. I need some positivity after this deep dive, I'm not gonna lie. But I think it's important we make a small pit stop into what WovenMC was and why it actually failed. WovenMC was a project involving Twilight Flower, Comp 500, Lamp Aura. Now, as far as I've been able to dig into it, Woven didn't have any technical reason to really exist, like so many blame Quilt for, when Twilight Flowers, then called Nuclear Farts, I don't even know what to say about that one, but I'm a fan, posted a thread on Twitter about the situation that we will get into a little bit later as well. It became very clear that the project was more a social response than a technical leap forward. But while Woven might not have stick the landing, so to speak, it sparked the idea that even Fabric was not the final say in modding, and there was a demand from developers for something even more radical, something a little bit more patched, something a little bit more stringed together instead of Woven. Okay, I'll stop with the Quilt jokes. Yeah, it's Quilt. Woven died so Quilt could live. Now, I've actually had the privilege of talking to i5, who was one of the original people behind the project, and I've had a talk with him about Quilt.
Well, people tend to know me as i5. I was in Minecraft modding. I kind of left in, I think it was 2022. Pretty much I was one of the maintainers of Fabric and then started Quilt. And then I guess I left Quilt and just started writing Rust instead.
So what was your reasoning for starting the Quilt project?
At the time, I guess it was a case of I kind of just disagreed with how Fabric was being run. Community didn't exactly like player at the time. There was lots of accusations of dictator going around. Monmouth basically just didn't want to be involved in the whole drama. How Quilt actually started, I think it was Zyden. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. He was this guy from Sponge. He actually ended up sparking the idea for the fork, and I kind of just contacted Haven King and AK9, and that's kind of where it started.
After this spark, the people involved with the very early version of Quilt started growing their small project into a robust and more compatible ecosystem that promised both Fabric and its own Quilt mods to run on it. At the time, the project, then called Fabric, was kept relatively closed, and it was far from complete. However, this did not stop people from finding out, with random users finding the GitHub page for Quilt only a few weeks after work officially begun. i5 allegedly ran out of free action minutes, meaning essentially if they wanted to work any further with GitHub, they had to pay for it or go public. However, if they made it public, they would run the risk of being discovered, which happened. After the discovery of Quilt, the community got a little bit confused. What is this? Why does it exist? Why do we need another version of Fabric? To answer all these questions, Haven King, who was part of the project from the beginning, and Toffee Max would post on the Quilt website explaining what the goal and process would be like. Quilt would build upon Fabric's already shiny new foundations, but with a twist in the way they would approach development, mainly a separation in specialization, meaning in their own words, that someone in charge of technical concerns should not be making important community decisions. Paired with an open leadership structure, they aimed for Quilt to be a much more open project than Fabric, which was at the time seen as dictatorial and ran by Player and Modmus. But more so Player, as Modmus would usually leave for a couple of days if there was any sort of drama. It would also promise faster updates by not being afraid to break certain aspects of their code if they wanted to see what would happen. And the ability for players to download the dependencies their mods needed automatically. However, this feature is still missing in Quilt today. Not to say Quilt right now is useless, as it does offer a lot of quality of life changes towards both developers and players alike. Plus, as mentioned before, you can run most Fabric mods on Quilt. Now, as you can see throughout the story, Quilt essentially has two reasons why it exists: a social aspect and a technical aspect. On the technical side, they have every right to exist and try and make a loader that they deem better than what we already have. That's the reason why we have Fabric, and with a promise of downloading dependencies automatically, it does sound like a really cool project never attempted before. Such spoutcraft, my beloved. I will get you one day. So if Quilt has a good technical reason to exist, why is my comment sections filled with only mentions of them being either the worst people ever or the best people ever fighting against transphobia? Well, let's dive into the social aspect of Quilt. Now, before I even start this minefield, let me make a few points clear here. Regardless of what your standpoint is on any of the things being discussed here, I think we can all agree that a human being can make their own decisions as long as it doesn't harm anyone. Secondly, I hate drama, and I'm not here to stir it. I'm here to clear things up. The stuff I'm talking about is in the past, and I want to make it very clear that this should not take away from the undeniable talent that works at Quilt. Got it? Good. So let's start off with why Quilt, and by extent Woven, split off on Fabric in a social aspect. We discussed earlier that Player has a reputation of being abrasive and actually has a history of being very controlling about his space in the Minecraft scene, to the point he tried to take down a mod, which he alleged was using its code, and he also had the tendency to ban anyone who would stir up any sort of drama, because then there would be no drama. Now in this case, it wasn't about who he banned. It was about who was unbanned. A user named Vatu was banned in the Discord because he said some transphobic messages, and according to an insider at Fabric, the moderation team did not keep an accurate record of who was banned and why, resulting in Vatu being unbanned rather quickly. With a vote about his unbanning becoming semi-public, this in turn caused a lot of people to become angry. Player then banned the two people making the most noise about the unbanning. Now, it should come as no surprise that when a person expresses views that are A, bigoted, and B, targeted towards a marginalized group, that group is going to be the loudest. So the people Player banned included people from the trans community. Other people then interpreted this act as supporting Vatu's beliefs, and thus Player, and by extent the larger Fabric project, was labeled as transphobic by outsiders. Many people also called for Player to step down from its leadership position, which caused Player to ban even more people. This is what caused Woven to be originally created, as Twilight Flowers actually was one of the two being originally banned for rising up against the unbanning of Vatu. A lot more drama ensued after this point, but that's more a thing of a certain drama Discord I know my videos get shared in. Yeah guys, I know you watch my videos. And yes, I know my last few videos had a few inaccuracies. And yes, I am inside your walls. Now, after the drama with Lex being accused of transphobia, and admittedly, yeah, that doesn't look good, does it? Quilt ended up being shrouded in a veil of drama and perceived radicalization, with many tweets going up about how bad they supposedly are. This essentially caused two sides to pop up: anti-Quilt people who in general only see the social aspect of Quilt, and pro-Quilt people who either like what Quilt is doing technically or socially, as the development and the community around Quilt is as separated as it can be. As a result, people either hear this woke loader, where all the blue-haired species go to, that's a real comment, look it up, I hope you're happy you decided to be outspoken that day, buddy, or as a better alternative to Fabric that tries to be inclusive and more transparent to its users, both technically and socially. Personally, I believe neither. I think Quilt has some great talent behind it and a lot of potential, but it has caused people on either side of the discussion to see the project as a drama magnet, including myself. Before I went into this, I didn't know what Quilt was. After some simple googling, I still didn't know what it was, so I had to rely on others telling me that it was just a fork with no benefits. Except it isn't. Quilt has a very powerful library, which to this day is still more expansive and powerful than Fabric's counterpart. But why is that not the first thing you talk about? Let's just end on another note, shall we? Quilt as a project is a user and developer first mod loader that offers a more powerful library than Fabric and even posts compatibility with a lot of the Fabric mods. With the exceptions of a few cases, it prides itself on being an inclusive and open community welcoming to everyone and anyone. However, the amount of Quilt exclusive mods are not as expansive as Fabric, which already suffered in the beginning of not having some of the more popular mods on it. Now granted, you can still run those mods from Fabric on Quilt. Quilt has the issue that its reputation in the wider Minecraft community is of it being a drama-driven community and a useless mod loader, and that has stifled its growth. But if you want my 2 cents, Quilt is far from useless. Its promised features, if implemented, could be the first in the modding scene, and is nothing to sneer at. However, on the drama side, I've not even touched the surface of this incredibly deep iceberg of many controversies Quilt either is directly involved in or just related to. And while the issues being raised in many of these controversies are worth fighting for, I don't think a Minecraft mod loader is the place to do it from. In conclusion, Quilt is an awesome project that tries to do cool stuff, but it has to fight an uphill battle against its own reputation that at least partly has to do with their attraction to drama and dramatic topics. Is it useless? No, I don't think so. Quilt is a microcosm of the entire issue in the Minecraft modding community. It's just two camps shouting at each other, and no one knows actually what's going on anymore. But I hope you enjoyed this largely unbiased piece, and yeah, I'm out. I was Lunar, you were very awesome, and man, I dug too deep this time.